It is now official. CNN projects that Donald Trump
That Donald Trump
will become the 47th president of the United States.
And I will end the electric vehicle mandate on day one. Thereby saving the U.S. auto industry from complete obliteration, which is happening right now, and saving U.S. customers thousands and thousands of dollars per car.
Is your industry waiting and bracing for this to be a guide of Trump policy on charging infrastructure and EVs?
Well, I think that it's clear that Trump has staked out a position here, but what is also clear is that the march towards electrification in this country is inexorable at this point. The total cost of owning an electric car or an electric truck is now lower than gasoline or diesel, and people are making decisions based on that economic factor. So we think that the market will continue to march forward, and perhaps, as Musk said, this is a short-term blip.
Welcome back to Turn Down for What, your source for EV news and updates. Like and subscribe for more content like this episode. Let's dive on in. Welcome back to Turn Down for What? Another election cycle.
Another episode.
There we go. Here we are on the day after Election Day, and a very important discussion to be had today. We kind of hinted to it last week. Obviously, nobody knew the outcome of what the election would bring. But here we are on the day after the election, and wanted to kind of bring in a full circle of some different people that have been on the podcast and that are in the EV space to have a discussion around what many people may question to be the next steps for the EV industry as a whole. And kind of some of what is taking place and what might be taking place in the near future based on the election results. So we have Will from F the Pump. Welcome back to the podcast. Thank you for being here. And Josh, you were only with us a couple weeks ago, but we were discussing and figured it would be insightful to have you back on just to kind of further the conversation down the line, just to see kind of how all this boils down. So all that to be said, as many of you listening should know, hopefully, I think most people in the world would know at this point, effective about 3 o'clock in the morning, most of us, I think, were up at that juncture. Donald Trump was elected as the 47th president of the United States. It looks as of right now, at the time of recording, like he has pretty significantly won across the nation with the popular vote and the Electoral College, obviously, which is the important factor there. And so that in essence, for the majority of Americans that now had voted for Trump is a celebratory point for the points that he was running on, which was economy and immigration and some of those variables. And we as a podcast, stand behind the EV agenda, which has been a controversial topic in this election cycle. It's been brought up in his campaign, and it's been brought up, and some interesting nuances with Elon and things. And so it's a really unique opportunity for us to kind of dialogue around what happens next. It is now November 6th, and we're about to enter a 4-year period, assuming that everything proceeds forward to January 20th without any hiccups. We're about to enter a 4-year period of what now looks to be a Republican-controlled White House, Senate, and maybe House. And so what does that mean for legislation for the EV agenda that's been in place? And what does that mean for the next steps? Will we see more promotion? Will we see a decline in EV adoption? And so, yeah, that's kind of where we're going to start. So I want to open the floor. Anybody want to begin by sharing their thoughts?
I think I'll start just sharing some of the kind of broader immediate reactions, which, I think we talked about the stock market and how it's reacted, and it's been incredibly positive. I think Josh was sharing Home Depot and Will, and well, there's two Joshes. This will be fun. Canadian Josh was sharing like the impact it has in Canada and how it is on manufacturing is, Home Depot and Josh Tennessee and Will talking about
It's Josh A and Josh T. You know what I mean?
Josh T. Okay. No, just talk about Caterpillar, American manufacturing, right? And I think Trump made an incredible pivot. And I've said before that he is very much a transactional politician, which should give some people who are really concerned a little bit of hope that, look, the guy is very transactional. So here comes Elon, put a whole bunch of backing and not just his verbal support, but made a super PAC and put people out in Pennsylvania, which is the pivotal moment when it turned Pennsylvania last night. That really almost eliminated all the other options. And that was a key moment. And he put a lot of effort into Pennsylvania, and Elon did. Of course, he was very vocal at rallies. Joe Rogan, huge presence out there with both a couple podcasts and his endorsement. And the stock market is rallying. Tesla is up huge today. Right. And then you've got across the board, the S&P, the Dow, Ford. Ford has a lot of manufacturing and hybrid pivot that we've talked about, right? And the union workers came out huge out there in Michigan, overperformed, and a lot of that, some would argue, is that Trump put a lot of fear in this idea of EVs. And what does that mean if he's anti-EV? But I don't think he is anti-EV. I just think he's transactional. And I think he's for American jobs. And I think he's for American manufacturing. He took NAFTA and renegotiated it, which nobody else would have done, to kind of strengthen that partnership between Canada, Mexico, and the U.S. There's a lot of fear about tariffs. But I think he's transactional. I think those tariffs are, when you go to a pawn shop and you go and say, hey, I want $1,000, and the pawn owner says, I'm going to give you 100, and then you negotiate somewhere. It's a negotiating tactic. It's what he does. He's not going to have 1,000% tariffs, but he's going to put it out there. It's going to be a thing. It's just so much that's going to be interesting and unknown. So people that think they know, or people that have all these worries and all these anxieties, I understand where they're coming from. But let's see how the transactions unfold is my take. And I think there's a lot of business and a lot of jobs and a lot of things that are the economy that are going to rocket here in the next couple of years.
Yeah, let me piggyback on that real quick when you were talking about the values. So I see a tale of two cities here. So like you mentioned, Ford is up 5%, General Motors is up 2%. You have Tesla is up almost 15%. But then on the reverse, you have Lucid, which has been having other issues. They're down 6.5%. Rivian, which has an earnings report coming out, which is probably affecting that, but they're down 9.5%. And then you have Nikola. Nikola is down 4%. So not everybody in the industry, but your traditional automakers are doing well. But then I also follow companies like Blink. Blink is a charger manufacturer that we talked to in the past, and they're down 12.5%. You have ChargePoint, one of the bigger players in that field. They're down almost 12%. So I do see across the board at least some hesitation into investing into that ideology that, had it changed, had it went the other direction, I think that there'd have been money in there. So there is some hesitancy on some people worrying where that is it going to hurt that industry. And, we maybe get into it a little bit more detail here in a little while, maybe not. So I'll just mention this real quickly. Based on most of the studying that we have done on these different programs, there are things they can do, but it's not going to affect the massive amount of influx of funds that went into this in the beginning. So there's still plenty of money that's going to be out there to develop the EV charging site. If you're worried that you were supposed to get a station and now you're not on the way to work, it will be coming. It's just that interest probably will change, and some of those funds will go into more job creation programs versus just giving it to, say, a solar or hydrogen farm.
So I think it's important to kind of set the table a little bit more before we really lay out the discussion on really what's taken place over the last 4 years and what's at risk, potentially with the transition. So obviously Tesla's been on the scene for many years. And, a 2016 Trump victory did not tank Tesla. I mean, it's been growing ever since. But really the push, if you will, really started ramping up 4 years ago. The Biden-Harris administration came in, and there were several key bits that they have done, because it's obviously part of their agenda, to incentivize the growth of EVs and the promotion of clean energy sources with solar, hydrogen, and some of those pieces. So in that, we saw the Inflation Reduction Act passed. That included the tax credits that was given to the new vehicle purchases. So what was the $7,500 for new EVs, and the used credit of up to $4,000. It had the U.S. based EV battery sourcing. There was the bipartisan infrastructure law, which included the NEVI program, which was about $7.5 billion of funds that were allotted to the development of basically 500 million chargers heads across the nation by 2030, which has already been passed through the states, and I'll touch that on in a minute. There was a lot of domestic battery production incentives. There was the electric school bus incentives, the transit incentives. They did support for unionized EV manufacturing. There are a lot of different pieces. The solar, a lot of that was built into that original Inflation Reduction Act, which passed in 2022. So that kind of sets the table for what was done, and that kind of led to a spur in manufacturing incentives and people going out and wanting to build solar farms, and kind of the promotion of some of that industry. So the topic of conversation is, I think that there needs to be a shift in, I think the overall topic is, are EVs dead, or are they going away? I think we will all discuss that today. I don't feel like we're at any risk of seeing EVs go away anytime soon. We'll talk about some of the investments that have taken place, and they're not going anywhere.
I just want to add real quick to that, Josh, and then get to hear from everybody. But in addition to what you just said, I think we've seen already the results of some of that with Kempower coming to the U.S. that we went and visited, Albatronic out there in North Carolina. We've seen with CATL and SK On bringing in their battery technology, LG bringing in their battery technology to domestic production. These are all things that I am hopeful that Trump will continue, because these are U.S. jobs, U.S. manufacturing. A lot of these things are located in the South with Blue Oval, with the SK On partnership in Kentucky. There's a lot of the VW manufacturing, right? There's a lot of this stuff that goes right into making America great again, that goes into America first, that goes into, bringing in chip manufacturing to Arizona and those kind of things, so we're not beholden to overseas chip manufacturing. A lot of these things were really good, and I don't think I'm hopeful that Trump, especially with Elon's partnership, I think he's going to see the benefit of some of this, and the funding for some of the NEVI stuff like you guys have had and others have had, that is allocated. It's not spent. It is allocated. It's not going to get pulled back. All of this legislation we just talked about, it would take a super majority to overturn it, which they don't, even though they've got maybe some control there, they don't have a super majority. So I think there should be a lot of relief that I understand why people are worried, but I don't think this stuff in the immediate future is going to change. And I'm really, really hoping that Elon can influence, the genius, as Trump called him, can influence some of this in a positive way. And imagine a day where if they can build a partnership there across the aisle to see value in jobs and manufacturing in the U.S. for this electric space. And I think there's a way to expand EVs in a way and tear down that partisanship that we talked about on previous episodes. Stop politicizing a technology and a science.
Something that you said that I mean resonates is, I think something that Biden-Harris has done very well in the passing of those laws was they mandated, and we talked about this last week about the componentry and the target of 90%, but they made an actual push to make sure that those products were manufactured in the U.S. And to your point, that did spur Kempower, which was a European company, not just to import their units, but they actually had to make a step and an investment into North Carolina to create thousands of jobs that are now making these EV chargers in North Carolina because of that piece of the law.
Yep.
Same thing happened, like we discussed with Alpatronic coming out of Europe, Star Charge coming out of China. A lot of these companies were forced to do manufacturing in the United States, which is, I think, a very Trump-esque goal if you look at some of what he's trying to implement. And so I definitely think that's something that is to be commended for the Biden-Harris administration, because whether you believe in the spending or not, that was a direct promotion of EV manufacturing and EV US-based job creation. And I mean, that's something that has created jobs, and I highly doubt there's going to be an attempt to wipe US jobs for that sake, because it would just be pushed back to China for the manufacturing, because the units have to come from somewhere. But
yep. So our guests come in. Sorry.
So,
yeah.
So yeah, we've kind of set the table now. We know what's there. We know kind of some of the basics of what exists. Let's go to Will. Share us some of your thoughts on what's taking place and kind of where you see this ball moving starting now and going into next year.
Well, I think the biggest factor in this is Elon. He really made a conscious effort last night in his speech to discuss Elon. I don't think that Elon's going to say, yeah, we need to get rid of all of this stuff, right? Obviously, it's counterproductive for Elon. So Trump does listen to his advisors. He does listen. Now, does he take that into advice and put it into action? I don't know, but he will definitely listen to Elon. Obviously, I don't think that actually the EV tax is going to go away. I know that was a campaign promise, but promises may be broken. I don't think that actually goes away, at least not in the very short term. I also feel that Trump, again, is not. I actually hope he takes away the mandate, though. And this is my opinion. Maybe it's my opinion on Americans do not like to be told what to do. They like to have a choice. Give them a choice that they can look at. Let them make up their own mind. We learned that with the COVID injections. People don't like to be told what to do. Give them a viable option. They will find it. And we've seen that. EV growth has continued to go up. It's no point has EV growth stalled. It is going to continue to go up. People are going to find out there's a better propulsion method. It is a cheaper method to go. Even if you don't have a tax credit, they're still going to buy it. Now, hopefully, there will be some sort of incentive, like there's an incentive for gas and oil companies. Hopefully, there's an incentive for all these EV companies so we can continue to bring the prices down. But I just don't see that the change is going to happen like people were warned. It was always fear mongering by both sides. And I think now that it's actually happened, Trump's in office, or will be in office, I should say. I just think it's going to kind of ride as we're seeing it ride. Just like you said, all those programs are already in place anyways. Nothing's going to change those programs. But production, manufacturing, again, hopefully most of that stuff does come back to the U.S. Hopefully that's what we see. But again, I think that the tax credit stuff is going to be a non sequitur. I don't think we're going to have to really worry about that. And with Elon advising, I still think the electric vehicle manufacturing, electric vehicle growth, all that stuff is going to continue to push forward.
And just real quick on the manufacturing, I want to point out Ford in their earnings call, this last one they just had, spoke directly to those manufacturing incentives, because they're right now a lot of the Mustang Mach-E batteries are coming over from LG in Europe, and that is going to change mid-2025 to being done out of Michigan in a new plant that they've got ramping up there. And then the European plant will support things like the Ford Explorer and the E-Transit and those things out there. And that manufacturing will be it will hopefully reignite the ability for the Mach-E to be eligible for the tax credit, because currently it is not. As of the first of this year, the battery materials and where it was manufactured made it so that it didn't qualify for any of the tax credit. Bringing that back and repatriating that should help that. And Ford gets manufacturing credits. And so they talked about both of those aspects in their earning calls. Looking forward to a year from now, they should start to see and realize some of those credits. And that's just a small example of Ford, right? There's many others, I think, that will experience similar. So just wanted to touch on that, Will, because I think you're exactly right.
I think
to that point, Hyundai doesn't get the tax credit. They're selling Hyundais left and right? Kia. My buddy just bought a Kia EV9. Didn't get a tax credit. So I think the tax credit is, although a great thing, I don't think it's the reason people are buying EVs.
Not the linchpin.
And I think one of the largest pieces that the EV industry lacked is, I don't think the tax credit is what's selling the vehicles. I think one of the largest pieces was the missing infrastructure. And the part two is going to be upcoming energy costs. I'm going to touch on both of those. Infrastructure, like we've already said, Biden-Harris passed that infrastructure bill. And like you said, Chris, it will take, in order to claw that money back from the states, it would take a super majority, which is not going to happen. One, like we've already said, I don't think Trump would make the effort to try to claw back money that's going to promote American infrastructure, American jobs. I mean, that would be a big push to get Republicans and Democrats to both support clawing back funds that have already been pushed out to the states. It's already at the states' hands. So one, that means like Jesse said a minute ago, all the infrastructure that's currently been promised, which the Biden-Harris target was 500 million plugs across the nation, not 500 million, 500,000 plugs across the nation. That target's not going to change. All the funds is already in the state's hands. I mean, Jesse and I already have a pipeline of 7 sites that we have in process. Speaking of, we won 2 sites in Virginia. We announced.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So we will be continuing our expansion into Virginia, all on this funding bucket, and that's not going to go anywhere. Will the tax credit disappear? Maybe. Could it? Like you're saying, I don't think it will. Could it? Sure, that's a possibility. But I don't think that's going to prevent the EV industry from moving forward.
I think it's more
kind of infrastructure available for charging improvements. That's going to increase confidence for this sustainable, for this more cost-effective transportation method that is quieter, faster, more enjoyable for me. Like I said, I went into the EV industry not necessarily being a gigantic, I'm buying this EV for environmental purposes. It saved me tremendous amounts of money, and that is just something to know. And so the infrastructure piece is going to grow, and in 5 years there will be thousands and thousands and thousands of more publicly available chargers available to everyone in the network, and that's not going to change. The second thing is energy. And one of the large things with the Biden-Harris administration was a push away from, the traditional energy sources that we would have, which was the coal, which was, potential oil, and all of those variables is something that we would likely see lower energy costs under this administration. Now, environmentally, that's its own conversation. But if you look at the affordability of cheaper power and cheaper energy, that makes the EV conversation even more convincing because energy as a whole would come down. Now, gas prices will be inversely affected as well. But at the same time, owning an EV becomes even cheaper if your electric costs and energy costs, because you generate your own energy, is more effective and you're not relying solely on solar, wind, and some of those other techniques.
Let's go to our international correspondent, Josh.
Let's bring in our Canadian correspondent.
Right,
Josh.
right.
Are you there?
The Canadian in Austin, Texas.
Because you're kind of an outside observer in a way, because I believe your family was able to vote, Josh, but your situation still not so much. What's your perspective on all this? Because you've got a whole worldly view that you've been through.
And traveled quite a bit. I've been into. Just in the last 12 months, I've been to every single Canadian province, and I think over half of the United States. So I've spoken to a lot of people, again, all surrounding, EV and that sort of thing. So you get a pretty good litmus test for the feeling, the vibe. I think there's some really interesting things. I'll start off by saying I believe there are very bright days ahead for everybody in America, whether or not you voted for the current or the new administration coming in. That's kind of my opinion on it. I think that from what I observed of Trump, and I'm viewing Trump through the Elon lens, obviously, just listened to every single podcast, every single interview, every interaction, read everything I can on it. And I have noticed a distinct change. I believe, like you guys have said, that, Trump he does listen to his advisors. He still makes his own decisions, but he does take advice from a multitude of advisors, which I think is smart. I think most smart businessmen do that. I also think that having, a genius like Elon in his ear is a really good thing. And I think that Elon has really educated him on a lot of things. You hear some of that come out in the Rogan interview. Yes, he doesn't have the technicals down and a lot of the stats and that sort of thing. He's still got a long way to go. But one of the big things I've noticed is he's changed from no EVs, EVs are the enemy, they're going to kill our, jobs. They're going to take away the auto workers. They're going to crush blah, 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 blah. That's kind of all vaporized. And it's become more of we're going to build EVs here in America, and we're going to build our EVs. We don't want the imported EVs coming in and flooding our markets and taking our jobs. And we don't want people to be mandated to buy an EV. We want to build good EVs here, and we want people to have choice. The only thing I hear him really vehemently negative on now is hydrogen. And again, that's probably the Elon factor, because Elon claims that hydrogen is a fool's errand, and he feels that it's a waste of time and resources. So
poor
that's
Jesse.
probably where that's coming from. Yeah, I'm sure there's more than one.
Sad.
Yeah. But yeah, and one more thing I'll just mention without running on too long here is I think that there's going to be a good road ahead for American manufacturers. I believe that America, especially this administration coming in, is going to want to not only build cars for itself, but also become a world leader and export cars. So I think that we're going to see support for technologically advanced companies like Tesla, and I'll say it, Rivian as well. Lucid to a smaller extent, but very much so with Rivian. I believe that building that plant in Georgia and getting those jobs going there, and having some of that tech and that American ingenuity exported to companies like Rivian, and to Volkswagen through the JV with Rivian. I think that there's definitely a lot of good happening there. And then we're hearing about other factories too, like Scout Motors talking about a factory in Franklin. So that's exciting to hear as well. And just kind of getting back to the grassroots of building things. We're entering. I saw a few people say that we're entering the founders era, the era of builders, and that's what America was built on, was industry and building, and not being the big consumerist ball, but kind of being the epicenter for everything that spreads out into the rest of the world. And if we can do that and hopefully bring interest rates down, I think we'll be looking pretty good.
Something to note is, where is the number one quadrant of the United States that the most EV manufacturing and production and job creation has been done? Where is the GDP right now predominantly gained across the nation? The Southeast. What else is to note? Trump won every single Southeast state, which isn't a surprise. Georgia was the question mark, but the entire Southeast is his.
We had faith.
I mean,
my wife's family's from Atlanta.
Was not even. It wasn't even a 2-point, 5-point. Like, it was a 5-point last time. It was a 15-point victory in one of the heaviest EV states that exists in the nation. And the Southeast, being that corner, is now the hub, like we've discussed in times past, of all of these EV jobs. Like you just said, the Scout plant, we have Ford, we got all of these companies that have invested into the Southeast because of good tax policy. But the American jobs that are coming, Blue Oval is not online yet. That is coming, and that is thousands of jobs created. And it's a topic that we can bring up, but Ford has invested $6 billion, or however many billion now, into Blue Oval City. That investment is into the EV market. And that's not like they're going to be like, oh, well, now we're backing out of our $6 billion plant that's halfway in construction. That's going to open. Scout is in the process of building their facility. All these battery companies are going to do it. And I strongly suspect, like we've said, that this administration would support the job creation that's going to come out of that. And, like we've said, there might be a drop in a tax credit. There might be a drop in a mandate. But overall, U.S. manufacturing is going to improve in the Southeast tremendously over the next 3 or 4 years, above and beyond what it already has been, because of the Biden-Harris push that they've done with this funding. And that extra incentives in the Southeast, along with good tax policy in Tennessee and some of those other surrounding states, has led to a tremendous boom in manufacturing jobs here. And, the other consideration is, we talked about this briefly last week, the tariff conversation and shunning China and shunning some of the surrounding countries that are threatening the U.S. manufacturing part of that actually protects the U.S. EV market. Like we're saying, the Ford, the Rivian, and the American-made, the Scout, that are going to be made here, because the threat of importing a $10,000 Chinese unit, I think, is now a lot less likely to happen, because there's going to be significant tariffs and stuff associated if if it's not a fair situation. So I do think that there's an overall win that comes into the U.S. manufacturing of EVs, like we've said. But the overall consideration for the Southeast and what the job creation has been and what it will continue to be will continue to push the GDP needle in the Southeast favor and all the other states that are pushing that initiative from Detroit all the way down through the Southeast.
Yeah,
And to
I
talk,
think it's sorry,
ahead,
Chris. I was
Josh.
just going to quickly add that just to kind of piggyback on that, you're talking about the manufacturing in the Southeast and so on. I think it's important to remember that with a manufacturing first administration, we're going to see a lot more, I'll just say, assistance in one way or another, whether it be, taxes or tax breaks or rebates or grants or whatever you want to call it on the manufacturing side. And so while they may pull back on front end retail incentives, I think that there is a lot of tools in the tool shed for them to improve margins for a lot of these companies. So I think that's important kind of to not forget about.
If you lose a $7,500 tax credit, but the corporate tax goes down to 15%, then all of a sudden the company can sell the EV for cheaper because the margins are better.
But what if the consumers
a flip?
Sorry, I didn't mean to speak over you there, but what if the consumer's ability to purchase a vehicle increases as well, right? Because their cost of living went down and their disposable income increased. So now, maybe you lose a 75, but they can afford it, or between, maybe they got a couple grand in the back end and then the affordability went up. Like, I just think there's a lot of things to kind of float and consider with. It's not just like, oh my gosh, we're losing 7,500 on the front end or a portion of that or whatever. I just think that there's a lot of different, like I said, tools in the tool shed that are going to be affected by that.
Well, and this is where I look at it and understand some of the economics that's going to make this very difficult. If you've blown an additional $20 trillion into the market, the only way to get our disposable income to be the same as it was is to remove that $20 trillion into the market. And right now, you've got two ways of doing it. You can create opportunity, which is what I think they're going to try to do, or you can tax people and put that money back into that to reduce that debt. So that's going to be the hardest challenge, is how do you reduce inflation that has been at 30-year highs, and even the 30 and 40-year highs. It was before then calculated in a different way. So the inflation rate actually is probably the highest since World War II or even before that. So, how do you get that number down? And I guess the best way would be to create jobs here. And I believe with how many offshoring positions that have happened over the last, say, 20 years, there's a lot of things that are being imported that we can make here and create those jobs for people here. So now it's just going to be the challenge to take some of that NEVI money, like Josh is talking about, and say, okay, can we make the processors here? Because if you're a skilled worker that can make a chip, that's going to pay better than if you're a McDonald's. Nothing against McDonald's. I think he did a great job as a fry man. But, you got to create those high-end jobs. And honestly, EVs are high-end vehicles. There's a lot of technology that needs to be developed. I just think we're still importing too much of it from other places that needs to be developed here.
Political question. What was better for him, the McDonald's play or the garbage truck play? Which one was
McDonald's?
I think the garbage, man. I think the garbage thing feeds right into this idea of we are not garbage. We are not deplorable. We are not Nazis. We are not racist. Stop talking to us like we are. And there's a whole bunch of Hispanics that showed up, blue collar union people that showed up. There's a whole bunch of people across this country. And although he didn't win a majority in some of those minority categories, every single one, there was this amazing moment on CNN where the person, and I love these moments when they happen live and they're unscripted, and the person says, bring up a map and let's see where Trump overperformed. And then they show it. Okay, now bring up the map for Biden. Let's see where he overperformed. It was empty. It was blank. Not Biden, I'm sorry, Harris overperformed compared to Biden. Not a single solitary county did she overperform, at least in that moment of the night. And, maybe that's changed with absentee ballots, but that's not the point. The point is, this isn't for the people that go and say, and there's a lot of it out there, like, this is misogyny, this is racism, this is blah, blah, blah. Is there some of that? Almost undeniably so, right? As with any society that is complex. However, that is not why this ended up the way it ended up. And I think, Will and I being out here in California, we see a lot of these what I call good intention policies and these efforts, because everybody wants to root for the underdog. We all root for the underdog. And so I understand the visceral, empathetic, kind way you'd like to help people. And then they don't understand the economics. They don't understand supply and demand. They don't understand the ethos of what it is to be an American for so many in the country, right? And because they don't understand it, they demonize it. And I think when we talk about these economic growth policies, and I'll give you one of the big things in California, a few years ago, when the economy was booming, the state of California had a 100 billion with a B dollar budget surplus.
Yeah.
They were trying to figure out, in fact, they gave us back tax money because there was so much of it, so much money that they didn't know what to do with it. And they legally had to give it back because it had gotten so big. Then there was this whole effort around equity and fair share. And they started demonizing the jobs and the infrastructure and the things that created it. And what happened was all of these people, like I have family members that work for Intel and NVIDIA, and they were paying massive, massive amounts of stock bonus taxes when they exercised these options and when these companies grew and when your 401k grew. And for the union people, like my wife, who is a union teacher, and her CalPERS benefits, they're not 401ks, but they're what I'm missing the word. What are those things called? The retirement funds. Anyway, all of those companies change your retirement portfolios, and all of those things ripple. And when you remove that, and the companies leave, and the people leave, and the tax base that actually pays for this stuff leaves, this year we have a $60 billion deficit. We have eradicated a surplus because of good intentioned policies that demonize all of these things. And I hope I hope we see all of it go away. I hope we see the politics of this idea of corporate greed, right? Is there some? Undoubtedly. Absolutely. It happens. We should guard and regulate against it, but it's not all that. And is there racism and misogyny in the world? Absolutely. We should guard against that, but that is not the majority of the case. And I'm hoping that tears that down. I'm hoping Elon's influence when it comes to the technology tears down that barrier. I hope that we see that growth. He's very smart, even with SpaceX, right? He's already taken and started to move Taiwanese technology and made it onshore and said, you can't do that in Taiwan. I need that in America. I need that in Vietnam. He's, Trump, for all of his idiosyncrasies, does have some type of weird relationship with China, with Putin, with these people, right? Again, he's very transactional. He's not going to go and close a door that he can influence for the good of America. And as much as
he'll make a deal.
He'll make a deal.
Make a deal.
Just like he did with Mexico and NAFTA. He'll irritate some people. He'll offend a bunch of people. He's going to say some stupid stuff, and they're going to look at him and be like, this guy is crazy. I don't know what he's going to do next. And that is all part of that negotiating moment. And so maybe I'm naive, right? Maybe I'm overly hopeful and optimistic, and all this stuff is going to fall apart and horrible things will happen. But I don't think so. I think this is all, I wouldn't invite Putin over for dinner. I certainly wouldn't drink anything he gave me. And I'd be careful about, getting shoved out of the window from somebody from China, right? If I disagreed with any of their policies. I'm not endorsing any of those regimes at all. What I'm saying is they're a reality in the world. And I think Trump has the best opportunity with a little bit of Elon's nudging to make, lemonade out of those lemons. And Ukraine, a lot of automotive wire harnesses come out of Ukraine. It is a lot of industrial agriculture comes out of Ukraine. Man, imagine the earth-shattering ripples that would come from helping end that war through maybe a more constructive dialogue. And now we're getting off on a tangent that I shouldn't have gone down, but
well,
here's Chris.
Tell me why you hate power companies too there, Chris.
Tell us how you hate the oil companies and the power companies, please, Chris. No, I agree with you. I agree with what you're saying. I think that a lot of times intention can be misconstrued, but at the same time, the world is not ending, regardless of how you voted yesterday. In 2016, everybody thought the world was going to end, and I had plenty of people saying World War III was going to take place. And 4 years later, we had no wars, and we were in a decent spot, all things considered, with COVID. And then in 2020, when Biden got elected, everybody said we're going to have world wars and the world was going to end. And 4 years later, everything is still in place. We do have some wars and some things to address. However, the world is still going to continue to spin. And so on a major political front, yes, there may be some issues that were not agreed to. There were some much more controversial issues outside of this manufacturing and job things, because I think one of the largest reasons Trump won was his economic policy. So us talking about him promoting the economy, I don't think that that's a stretch to state that. Now, your views on more polarizing issues like women's rights and things like that, that is something that is a very partisan issue that is its own topic. But for the economy of the EV space and for what he's going to do for companies, I don't find that to be too much of a question, because I think that's one of the major reasons that he gained as much support as he did. And so economically, I think that we're all agreeing that there's going to be a lot of opportunity that comes out of that. And, a lot of people, I think, have provided grievance and, hey, tax cuts to the rich and, it's going to affect the poor. But at the same time, like we just discussed, the corporations, if you bring those jobs back in, it makes life more affordable and it promotes American jobs and manufacturing. And so time will tell. I mean, I think the world will keep spinning. And in a year, we are going to see that the world is going to continue to spin. I don't think there's going to be, any life-altering things that are going to take place in the next 6 months. But I do think economically, there is a large opportunity to push that ball forward. And I think the summation of that is I don't think that the EV industry is going to be overly harmed by it. The tax credits, I think that they stick, but could they disappear? And would it be hugely surprising if they did? I wouldn't be surprised. It's a possibility to see that the tax credits removed. And yet, I think that the jobs are going to be promoted. I think that the industry is going to be promoted. And yes, there will be gas being potentially promoted as well, which is not a problem. I mean, this is a space for everybody. And, I think to Will's point, there should not be this mandate, because Americans like to have a choice. They don't like to be told what to do. We were founded on that principle. We didn't want to pay, 6% taxes on tea or whatever it was. And here we are as our own country. And then 20 years later, we're being taxed 30% and the government's telling us what to do. And, here we are. But we don't like being told what to do. That's how we became a country. And so
real quick on the oil
thing, the EV space will grow. It may not grow as quickly as it would if you put these mandates and these extra incentives and dumped a ton of money into something, but the space is not going anywhere.
Real quick on the oil too. A lot of people don't realize that although we produce more oil than ever, and I think we're number one in the world now, a lot of that oil cannot be refined in the United States and Canada. A lot of those refineries were set up to use a different type of crude that we still do import. And so I do think two things can be true, where you can increase the production of oil and have environmentally sensible oil drilling and export that stuff and benefit the economy of the United States and continue to push for renewables and wind and solar and things that make sense. And I personally love nuclear. I think you guys have had some small nuclear plants out there in Georgia. EVs are going to need the grid to expand. And so having that energy independence is multifaceted. Just like you wouldn't want to have all of your investments in one stock, you don't want to have all of your energy in one place. You want to have it to be diverse, a diversity of supply chain, diversity of energy, diversity of all of this is important. And so I think people often overreact to it, and I'm hoping this brings a balance. I just want a balance, man. I want there to be. I don't want people that I love and care for to have their rights taken. I don't want pollution in the water. I don't want air that I can't breathe. But I also don't want it to take 2 years to open up something, and a year and a half of that is regulation, red tape, and supply chain problems.
That is its own topic altogether.
Amen.
I do think that we could see like in our industry, Jesse and I are about to deal with 6 months of red tape. We've been already we got awarded our sites in Tennessee 9 months ago. And we've been under the red tape of federal government since then. And we still have another 4 months to go before we can even break ground. And so reducing regulations does help. Obviously, you have to make sure there's a consideration piece into those things. At the same time, a lot of times government's way too complicated. It's way too much. And the other part of what you were saying, Chris, is, we have to find the balance of promoting a better future for us and realizing that as of, today we are sitting at like $35 billion or trillion dollars of debt. And that number
Yeah.
keeps going up every year, every president. It's continuing to go up. And we may have an environmentally more friendly future for our kids, but the whole economy is going to crash and go bankrupt because we're there's just no more money in the system. How much can you borrow? I have no idea how that math works, but at some point that line doesn't continue to extend throughout the long distance future. And we were at when I remember when Obama was president, we were like 8 or 9 trillion, and now here we are 12 years later, and we are 4 times that. And so there has to be a designated effort by whatever means necessary to figure out a way to flip that cycle. And right now, gas powered vehicles are on the road, and the fact that we have to rely on Saudi Arabia and Russia to provide us our fuel is a scary thing, I think, if you look at world politics. But being able to produce that and manufacture that ourselves and even become an exporter opens up economic opportunity to help maybe flip that scale.
That's one thing I want to bring up is that the other benefit to Trump is that he likes to cut regulations. So all the things you guys are talking about is going to be helped because of that. And you also have Elon talking about the government efficiency. So now you're talking about guys that are going to talk about cutting regulations, making the government more efficient so that some of these projects can actually happen that are promised. You're talking about the Biden-Harris administration putting all that money and only installing 9 charging stations, right? It was billions. You're talking about
it was a very polarizing issue in the Trump campaign, and it was the way he presented it technically a lie.
Yes,
we'll call that one out.
But
as of today,
but it was true.
Yeah.
But my point is that this is the stuff that you mentioned yourself. Right? With the team of Elon and Trump, I think all that stuff's going to happen. And one more point I wanted to make on the EV tax credit. I hear more the people that say they can't buy an EV. It's not because of price. It's because of charging. The infrastructure is horrible. And as much as everybody's saying how great it is, it's horrible out there. Thankfully, Tesla, Ford, GM, and whoever else has already allowed their vehicles to charge at Tesla superchargers. It's made my life with my Ford Lightning a ton easier.
Absolutely.
So we need to build the infrastructure. We need the regulations to get out of that so that infrastructure can be built and updated. That is way more important to everyone I talk to than the price of the EV at the time.
And something to note is the fact that the EV charging industry would have never developed the way that it did without the funding that Harris-Biden passed. Because, without that incentive, I can tell you as a charging station developer, it is a very, very bad business model to spend 100% in rural Tennessee on charging stations. It's never going to make money. It would never make money. You'd have to buy really cheap Chinese products, and maybe over a 20-year period, you get your money back. It's very bad investing. It took the incentives to get that, and now that it's in place, it will promote the industry as a whole. And I think you'll see good growth and development and job opportunities out of that. But by itself, without that incentive, the charging industry would have remained very, very stagnant for years to come, because it's the chicken or the egg. And we were at this weird phase where there was not enough charging. Electrify America had an unstable network. Tesla was the only one doing it right. And maybe the opening of the Tesla network would have just been enough. But, it's something that without the funding that's been pushed, you would never see this massive infrastructure push like it has taken place over the last 2 years, and what will take place over the next 5.
Yeah, and
I would rather see the funding go to actually that kind of infrastructure than actually giving tax credits to EV buyers, to be honest with you. Yeah, but I was just going to kind of jump on there and say that I think it's, with Elon coming on board with his DOGE, his Department of Government Efficiency, I think that with those monies that have been earmarked and any further monies to come, I think, having somebody like that who's very intimately familiar with charging infrastructure, as he literally runs the best one in the world, we're going to see a much more efficient use of it. We're going to be able to get a lot more out of that money that you say that's earmarked for it, that it's going to be, have a lot more fruit for the seeds that are put in the ground.
I just don't want a whole bunch
of... Just as a random tangent, it's really funny that the fact that Elon for years has backed the Dogecoin and all of that, and then just the irony of the fact that there was a perfect fit for the Department of Government Efficiency to equal Doge. It's like the stars aligned in the sky for Elon Musk to have like the perfect role in the government. And I haven't looked at Dogecoin today, but I'm sure it's going to go skyrocket high.
It was up last night.
Yeah.
Too funny.
But yeah, it's just the irony. It's up 14%. So yeah.
Gotta love the memes.
The irony of the Doge position, that is a true Elon position. But do we actually think that Trump will create a new division called the Department of Government Efficiency? And do you think that Elon will actually be tasked over that? Or do you think that was
yes. I wouldn't be surprised. Who knows?
I think Elon will put a team together.
Right.
Can I say one thing
about
one
of the busiest men on earth, one of the most successful men on earth? He's running several very busy things. Does he want to get in the cogs of federal government? Maybe. I mean, he seems like he's
let me say one thing to that somebody told me, and it really kind of knocked my socks off. This was in a space that I was on the other day, and the guy brought up the point, and he said, okay, well, Elon's adding this new Department of Efficiency to his plate, and so on and so forth. Well, the argument back is, how much time is Elon going to get back that's saved where he's tied up in litigation and lawfare right now, having to go to court for insane things, these shark studies and every level of government coming after him on the SpaceX front, or whether it's Neuralink or whatever, just cleaning up a lot of that attacks that he's been under. I think is going to free up a decent amount of time, enough that he'll be able to assemble a strike force.
The fact that he's the top 10 in the world in Diablo while doing everything,
oh man,
to me indicates the fact that he could spare a little bit more time for this purpose. But one of the most insightful parts of his whole podcast episode with Joe Rogan is the fact that it's like number 12 in the world for
it's crazy.
So I mean, rock and roll to him, but I mean, I think he's okay.
Shows you that he goes all into whatever he's involved in.
100%. And he does it very well. Apparently, everything he touches, he does very well. So
100%.
On what you're talking about in terms of regulation and how I've been like, let's get the politics out of this stuff. California again, right, with their coastal commission went, and he's launching these things out of Vandenberg Air Force Base, and he applied to continue to do that. And the coastal commission, clearly because of the politics of it, 100%, and nothing to do with anything else, tried to prevent that and stop that. Now, ironically, the Space Force, also started by Trump and his first administration, actually has jurisdiction over that Air Force base, and they can kind of ignore the Coastal Commission if they need to for reasons of national security. But I hope things like that go away, right? The politicization of that. They've even politicized the idea. There's stuff out there about his application for U.S. citizenship and this kind of that. Could he be kicked out of the country? And the fact that somebody's even trying to do that and spend time looking into that, and just is
crazy.
All that stuff just needs to stop.
Crazy. Yep.
Government inefficiency.
Yeah. Purposely putting up roadblocks because you feel a certain way about a certain thing. And look, those need to be separated and they need to be isolated. Science and technology and progress and our ability to launch rockets and not be beholden to Russia or any of these is incredibly vital. And what he's doing with this technology and the money he's saving on these rockets. And when you think of the traditional, it is, I'm telling you, man, he has a lot of, there are a lot of things with both Trump and Elon that I wish they would say and do differently. And someone needs to continue to pressure them to do so and open their eyes to those things. But you do not then, you need to separate and isolate those policies and those things that are in the best interest of the country. And so I'm very, very able to compartmentalize that. And I know there are people that are much more deeply impacted personally than I am by these things. I understand that I am privileged to use a word in my circumstances, but I do think it's important that we separate those aspects of these two personalities, because there are definitely things that shouldn't be ignored that they say, and factual inaccuracies that need to be corrected, like with the billions of dollars for 8 stations, the difference between spending money and allocating money, right? And that said, we need to have efficiencies. We need to have our own rockets. We need to have, manufacturing, and we need to have the leverage and the tools at our disposal, whether or not that's tariffs or whether or not that is funding or whether or not that's cutting efficiency, all of these things, right? There is no perfect solution. Somebody will benefit and somebody will lose. And now we just need to decide what it is that's best for the country, so and those people that lose need to be like somehow repatriated into the workforce. Those people that aren't doing coal, or those people that aren't doing gas vehicles, or those people that, whatever that is, right? There need to be people to fix the robots. Someone needs to still fix these technologies, and we need to have education, and we need to fund all this stuff. Everything's about balance. And I think
go ahead. The most important things coming out of all this and going into the next season, and it's always been the case, but I feel like America as a society has lost touch with this. We need to turn off the news and do our own research, do our own studying, because one thing that's been abundantly clear is, in this election cycle, if we all voted based on what one news channel said, it would be a drastically different outcome. But there's obviously this massive bits on both sides. It's not like it's just 100%. CNN or it's just Fox News. There's this massive, rift. I think it's primarily skewed to one side, with the majority of stations aligning for a specific set of disinformation, but both sides are guilty of it. And so us as Americans, it's our responsibility going into an election cycle, going into policy changes, is to actually understand what society is and what's happening in our society, and to care enough to actually take that time to do the research. And we have the benefit of having technology at our fingertips. We don't have to listen to the radio to see what's happening in the national news. Just do your own research. When it comes to these efficiencies and these red tapes and the laws and the programs, it's just a matter of us taking the time to turn off what other people tell us to believe, and to actually take the time to study what's in the best interest of us. Like we discussed, however many weeks ago it was, EVs should not be a left-sided issue. It should be a American people issue. If it makes sense for your family, buy an EV. If it doesn't make sense for your family, don't buy an EV. And that should be the end of the conversation. But we've made this gigantic push where it's all like, everything's partisan, and it doesn't matter. Do your own research, have your own feelings, and let's come together as a people and strive to be a better people moving forward. Because the whole saying, united we stand. I mean, that's where we have to land, is in this united place where we all are on the same page with, hey, we might be politically different on a controversial issue. But at the same time, most of us with most things would agree on a certain set of principles that if we just stop believing what other people told us to believe about certain people or about certain policies, we could promote a better future for America. And, when somebody says something or when something's proposed, do your research and make an educated decision before you just willy-nilly believe, because the moment you get probed into that, I guarantee you there'll be holes in that logic. So,
and that's why man is bad, because one side's going to tell you have to do it, and their followers are going to go, yes, sir, yes, sir, yes, sir. But the other side's going to say, hell no. That's your point. What you just said there proves why mandates are bad.
Yeah. And as we're entering into this age, I really think it was highlighted with this recent election is the advent of citizen journalism. And I know Elon has mentioned that a few times, but with platforms, these social platforms, and like Chris is a great creator, and I know Will's out there. Well, here we are on a podcast, right? We are citizen journalists in some way, shape, or form out there, and having that available at your fingertips now is just open up this whole new world of information. And like you said, you're getting it directly from the source. Like, go to the actual source, figure out what the facts are, and you're able to get a range of insights and opinions from boots on the ground people. If I want to know what's going on in California, I can literally just hop on and watch Chris's stuff, and I know what's going on there, right? Because he's there and he's just unfiltered. There's no crazy agenda or whatever. And you can also cross-reference that with someone else who's in Cali. Like, look at Will's stuff, So I think that is great advice, Josh, is to get out of the news, turn off the TV, and look at some of these other incredible tools that we have at our fingertips.
I mean, it's been proven. I mean, coming out of when Elon bought Twitter, there was a whole series proving what was buried in the weeds. Zuckerberg has come out and said that there's been actual efforts through the federal government to hide and to disinform, and regardless of what you believe and which side of the political side you're on, we should all stand for truth as a people. And we can be totally different on our viewpoints, and that's to be respected. But we should all seek truth, because at the end of the day, that's what holds us. That's what we need to hold dear. Because if there's a direct lie being said about something, it should be called out, and that's something that only transparency will provide. And I think X, it's been controversial because a lot of people dog Elon for being so politicized. But X is really now the untamed space that you can go and see literally anything. Because it's literally completely off the rails, and so you can't see
it now. This is an argument I have with a lot of people. It's not that it's off the rails. It allows you your constitutional right to say and show what you want.
It can
That's
be the
it.
farthest
It's a
left
constitutional
concept, or it can be
right.
the farthest right concept, and it's all there. And it's the good, the bad, and the ugly, and it's your job to make sense of it. But it's unfiltered, and that's the thing that the American people need, is the right to be unfiltered. And that's what helps you learn the truth, is being unfiltered. And having the federal government say, "Well, we're going to hide this, and we're going to show that, and we're going to promote this." It was yesterday. Google actually came out and admitted publicly that they had done skewing on the results of looking for polling locations based on the
not
so
really. No,
that's not quite right.
No. Hold on.
Yeah,
there was more to it.
Whoa.
Yeah, so that was based on Harris County.
Yes.
And so it was showing people Harris County because of the last name, so they were just highlighting that it wasn't showing the place. It was showing a location.
And I don't know what that
GPS
has to do
location.
with EVs, but
no, but this is a great example of the citizen journalism, though, right? Is that so?
It was
Josh,
cleared up on X.
It was cleared up, yeah. So it was.
I didn't see that stream on X. So look, I haven't gotten to that truth bit yet. There you go.
Right. And so, but you do have to look. You have to actually care enough, and most people just want it to be fed to them. They want fast food information, and there's not a lot of there are not a lot of value in fast food information, unfortunately. And so it does take, you have to put people in your orbit that are diverse, that do, right? Like, you need to have people in your orbit that are truckers. You need to have people in your orbit that are plumbers. You need to have people in your orbit that are from alternate communities that maybe you're not familiar with. You need to have a diverse people, because these people have the lived experience of it. And that includes things, right, like this, where that information got out there in one example, and then you start to dig deeper. And yes, it's because Harris County, and it worked, I believe, for JD Vance as well, right?
Because Vance is location. Yep.
Yes,
and
so
Harris County, Georgia, as well, that they try to do, and we just happen to have an application in Harris County, Georgia.
Yeah,
so that's
what it was. That was the algorithm picking up on that, and that was not an effort to in any way. Yeah. And there's a lot.
But it was
examples.
But Chris, it was solved really quickly though.
It was.
It was literally a couple hours, and you heard from the actual company, from their official account. Like, that doesn't happen on any other channel. Like, you think about if it aired on TV or something like that, you could be a day or whatever later, and what would they do? Print a retraction or something?
Nobody would see it.
Even find exactly. Nobody would even see it. And yet here we are, and we all have it at our fingertips
instantly. Yeah.
That's
and it does. No, go ahead, Will. Sorry.
That's the thing with Fox and CNN. If you watch only CNN, you only get CNN's view. You watch Fox, you'll get that's where you get on Twitter or X and other things. You're getting both sides. And again, who made which out of these three media companies? Which made the biggest effect on the election? Fox, CNN, or Joe Rogan?
Joe Rogan, 100%.
Rogan.
I think that I'm hoping we will start seeing a shift in what people use for their media sources, because again, Rogan had a much higher effect on the election than Fox or CNN did.
But look at that, Will. On your example right there, that was a 3-hour long format interviews. That wasn't a bunch of sound clips with some announcer, putting their 2 cents in and constructing some type of theme or whatever they wanted to push. It was literally like, I can sit here like I'm in the room with this guy, and I can hear exactly in real time what he's saying for 3 hours straight, no script, straight up, and for multiple guys too, right? Because we had Trump and Vance and Musk, and it was kind of like, and you really got to know them.
What's crazy is the fact that there's 140 million votes that have gone out in this election. 50 million people watched that video.
Yeah.
I don't know the global impact of that, but that's a significant.
That was just the one video, or all of them combined?
Just
That one.
just the Donald Trump interview has 46
Wow.
million views on YouTube alone, and it was put on X. And I think there was like I think they
On
said like
Spotify as
80
well?
million people that had seen it.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
Joe
Like-
Rogan, he has muscle cars, he has regular cars, he has a Tesla Plaid. He talks about the benefits and how he loves all of them. I think that's every one of us. If I had a 57 Chevy with a blown big block in it, I would be happy to drive that car just as much as I like to drive my Lightning.
And-
So
and
I
to
think that's the thing. The average person really don't need to jump in the middle of the minutia back and forth. It's going to be fine.
Yeah.
We're going to be fine.
Yeah.
It's fine.
And to show the transactional nature again of Trump, what was very interesting about that whole situation, right, is where that all came from was decades ago, right, where Joe Rogan taking over for the UFC needed a place to do his fights. I'm not a UFC guy at all. It's not my thing. But right, and I can respect that. I get it. I'm not going to watch it, but here's a situation where this guy was not provided a platform for his sport.
You're talking Dana White.
Dana White. Sorry,
Dana White.
You're right.
Yeah, they get crossover here and there. Yeah,
no,
yeah.
you're right. And so Dana White was not provided a platform for his sport, and Trump said, you know what, fine, do it here, and it really is what allowed it to be a thing. And so, but that opens the door to those people like Dana White, like Joe Rogan, like those people.
And Joe was a part of that conversation as well, but it was head by Dana White.
Yes,
and
I'm
it's
sorry.
easy. It's real easy to look at that back then and say, well, it was the MMA. It was this, that. No, back
it was nothing
then,
at the time.
it was nothing.
Right.
Yep.
And a very rich man gave somebody an opportunity to make a change, and they turned it into one of the biggest entertainment venues in the nation and probably in the world now. So that's the kind of thing. Give people opportunities.
It's an
What were you saying there, Will?
$11 billion
That's the
company. So.
Green calling, I hear.
And I'll also say with those long format things, as someone who often says stupid opinions that are uninformed, right? We need to be more forgiving of that. We need to allow for the conversation with each other and on the public airwaves, and then allow for the correction, right? Just like I was just corrected, just like Josh was corrected. We should be able to have these conversations, and I should be able to have a thought, an idea, and somebody come in and then educate me on why that's not a fully formed concept yet, or no, you've got some misinformation there. But I shouldn't be afraid to have it. And Elon has said things that aren't true. Joe Rogan has said things that aren't true. And then those get corrected. But if you stifle that, if you stifle the conversation, then it all gets filtered through a lens that is also disinformation or is overly simplified and is not nuanced. And so we need to have this conversation normalized without saying that person is deplorable or a Nazi or evil or a fascist or a communist or they are going to end democracy, right? That needs to not devolve to that. It needs to be that person had good intentions but was ill-informed. They were wrong. Let me tell you. Let me give you another perspective. They're right from their point of view and what they value. I'm right from my point of view and what I value. Let's make sure government doesn't keep either of us from living that preference.
One of the key parts of the foundations of this nation was healthy debate. And I feel like we've lost the ability to have a rational conversation. Left and right needs to be a rational conversation. If you believe what you believe, and I believe what I believe, there should be the ability to have a healthy debate, because that's the foundation of our nation. And it shouldn't be a blow up on one side or the other. If both of you have logical points, then there should be a middle ground there. But at the same time, like, we're all entitled to our own opinions. And so
that's what this podcast is.
Be civil to each other.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, we debate what we do like and don't like about our EVs. That's why this isn't a political show, it's a EV show. So when we say we want our vehicle to have this more range, or if we look at the new car that's coming out, the new Scout, and say, well, I kind of like that for this reason or that reason, we're giving the honest our honest opinions, because we're EV drivers. We know what we want and don't want. And, people need to be the same way. They just need to take advice where they feel like it can, they trust it, and kind of get out of your shell a little bit. I was not an EV driver 2.5 years ago. And then once I got into it, I realized, hey, this is the right way to go. For me, it might not be for everybody. I don't pull, 20,000 pounds with my truck anymore. I used to. So there's differences for all of us. And I would not have known that had I not talked to people, had I not looked in a different direction. And I think that's the key. I don't care that if you voted one way or the other. All I care about is it's over. Let's figure out a way to move on from this. I want your community to do great. I want my community to do great. Let's figure out a way to do it. Because if you don't want to work with
America.
me, I can't help you.
Absolutely.
I love it. I love it. Well said, brother.
It's a great.
I was just I was called out on by another YouTuber just yesterday because he was talking about how Tesla and Elon are scams, and I said I don't understand that since I've had Teslas for 9 years and they've been nothing but great to me. And he goes, "Well, you're an Elon fan, so you don't count." And I'm like, "Well, I own 3 of the brands too, right? Yeah, I don't Teslas,
Porsche, Ford, Tesla.
Right. I'm like, so I actually have an opinion, and when my Cybertruck's motor went out on my recent trip, I called Tesla out on it. I didn't say
you didn't hide it.
My trip got paid by my Ford Lightning. So it's we got to be able to talk amongst each other. If we can't even talk amongst each other in the EV community rationally, how do we talk about EVs with gas guys rationally?
Yeah.
And like you said, first of all, the First Amendment is free speech. That's literally the first thing that they talked about. So yeah, we should be able to have free speech in this country. It should not be government censored or government chosen what free speech is. But 2, we got to have that. They come to Jesus, right? You got to talk about it. Every politician talks about it. As soon as I'm elected, we're going to bring America together. We just need to actually have both sides be open to coming together.
I hope we can make some steps this time, for sure.
I think we can. Well, everybody likes lower taxes. Everybody likes having less money going towards different things. And I think once they start seeing that hit their pocketbook, they realize there's a different change in doing things, and it's going to help everybody. But we'll see.
I think, Jesse, I'll just add on that, there are good examples of very civil people from, that may have a different point of view. I'll shout out to Rohan Patel, used to work for Tesla, was an executive with Tesla. And you know what? Like, we disagreed on almost everything. We agree on EVs, but there's a lot of other things we disagree on. And you know what? He put a post out and he's like, you know what? I was wrong. And he really was very vulnerable and very honest. And I was like, wow, I was reading his tweet, his X post, and I was like, you know what? I have a ton of respect for this guy. That takes so much cojones to step up and kind of extend a hand across the aisle and say, okay, guys, congratulations. Your shed won, whatever, let's work together. And I'm like, you got to respect that. That's awesome. We need more of that. Yep. And if it went the other way, I would hope that I would be that respectful. So shout out to Rohan.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think as we have expanded this conversation, we can begin to rope it back in. And I would like to give each of our wonderful panel here the opportunity to maybe give a 1-minute summarization thought behind everything from what's happened, what we've talked about, and what your thoughts are for the next 4 years.
Chris.
Yeah, I just hope we continue to have an open dialogue. I hope that Trump does some things and puts even some of his opponents in positions to have some cross-aisle collaboration. I hope that the discourse can be different than it was leading up to yesterday, so that we can just kind of come together as a nation, even in some small ways. I know it's not going to be perfect for everybody, but I just want to see us succeed as a country, our business to be successful. I want to see everybody have opportunity to grow. I want it to be a meritocracy. I always tell people that I don't like the idea of equity. I have 2 kids and their life will not have equitable outcomes. And if I can't control that within my own 4 walls, there's no way to control it as an entire country. We should, again, root for the underdog. We should give people opportunities and help, a hand up, not a hand out, to use a cliche. But we need to get rid of this idea of fair share and this idea of equity. These aren't real things. These are fantasies. And I think that's just kind of one of those opportunities, I think, that we have to really drive innovation and science and thought and conversation. And let's collaborate and let's bring people together and respect each other's beliefs. And let's lean on freedom and liberty and not on regulation. And that's what I'm hoping we see out of this. And I'm sure it won't be that, but if it can just be a step towards it, I'd be super happy.
Awesome. Will.
Yeah. It's every politician, right, both sides, they throw out the fear mongering, and the world's going to end here and the world's going to end there. I don't think the world's going to end like Josh had said earlier. I think it's just, look, we need to find some sort of common ground. We're never going to find the middle ground. We need to find some common ground. I think that will work. I don't think the EV tax credits are actually going to go away, and if they do, hopefully it's in exchange for maybe, like I said, infrastructure incentives or what have you. I don't think EV progress and sales are going to slow either. Again, give America a choice, give them a viable product they will buy. So I really think that now that it's over, hopefully we can get this thing certified. No, there's gonna be no problem with that between now and January 20th. I think we can then start going forward a little bit. I really think America spoke here. They put a referendum out. You see, law and order is top of line, economy is top of line, immigration is top of line. I hope that both sides actually see that, hey, you know what? Really needed to have this electoral college win as well as the popular vote win to understand that, hey, this is a big country that we can actually maybe see common ground. And I really hope that'll happen.
Absolutely.
Josh.
Yeah, I think America spoke very loud and proud last night. It's extremely obvious just through all the different levels of government, whether it be the White House, the Senate, and looks like the House of Representatives. I think that it's important to bring America together. I think there is tons of common ground, and I don't think I would venture out to say I have never seen such a diverse Republican party. I know we have this two-party system, but there are more Democrats involved in that platform than had ever before, and independents too. So we have something here that's never been around before, and so it's exciting to see just really the talent and the team and all the talent represented. I think is going to be very, very good for America. Having somebody like Elon. Again, he's a very important part of this, and I don't think that can be understated. I know people say, "Oh, Elon, you're just an Elon, whatever, simp or whatever." Okay, great, whatever. But look at what the guy's done. Look at his resume, and why are his companies the two top places that the university students want to work at when they get out of university, right across the country and really internationally too. I don't think there's too many places where people don't want to work for Elon Musk. So there's got to be something there. So if he can inject that energy into the American people, I think we've really got something going. It's great to see him and his positive influence on Trump and JD Vance too. I noticed actually in the Rogan interview with Vance, his head had been kind of turned in a new direction, even towards solar. A guy that was really against any renewable energy. Now the guy's pro solar. I'm like, wait a minute, who's this guy? This is amazing, and that's Musk. So that's really excited to see. I think overall, I think it's going to be great for America. And just speaking on from the point of view of Canada, it's definitely a party that is different than Canada, but I think Canada is going to benefit as well. I think there's going to be some incredible products come out, and economically, there's going to be some great spill off for them as well. So overall, I think we need to respect each other and approach this all with some understanding, kindness, and like Will said, for the common ground.
Awesome.
Jesse.
So first off, between Chris and Josh, yes, I am always right. Sorry about that for you too. Secondly, Chris, it's actually $68 billion, not 60. So don't shortfall the fact you got another $8 billion to pay for. And if Elon left, that would have been another $10 billion on top of that. So now that's out of the way. Is there going to be any issues? Is any of the car companies or any of the charging stations not going to happen that are currently in the pipeline? Absolutely not. That's going to happen. Don't worry about that. If you drive an EV, you're fine. Is there going to be more innovation in the EV sector? Yes, because I think there's going to be some creative gas and electric top systems, just like what is coming out. And that gives more options. More options is what America has. You walk into a a grocery store, you've got 60,000 different ways to buy cheese. That's kind of what we want. So I hope that is something that continues. And I believe that regardless, that's what's going to happen with the influence of Elon. I'm still in all with Elon. I think that if he does have a hand in some of the programs in America, America be better. I think that your comment about more independents and Democrats being involved in this administration is something that is underrated by a lot of people, because I think that the Republican Party that you see today is far further to the left than it ever was before. And I think that the alternative, they went too far to the left on the other side. They haven't moved to the right to get that. And that's what's happened here. And if they don't make a correction, you're going to continue that down the road. But I think from an EV standpoint, we're good. I think everything's going to be fine. And I can't wait to see Rivian do well. I can't wait to see some of these other car companies do well, because I just don't see anybody trying to hurt the jobs that's in the Southeast.
I agree.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to anchor us home. Here we go. To the, as of right now, 72 million people that voted Donald Trump into office. Congratulations on, basically winning the goal of what you were striving in the election. We've discussed today, I do think there's economic benefits. I do think that there's going to be a lot that's going to help potentially promote the industry. There could be some detractors, but I do think that we're going to see a positive. To the current 67 plus million voters that have voted for Harris. That is still a lot of people who were diabolically on the other side of the spectrum that are evaluating what that means. And I think the whole point of today is, let's find a way to continue to push, one, the EV industry forward. I think that all of us are standing in a place that we are going to see this industry move forward. But two, as a whole, let's all seek the truth together and find a way to work through the next several years as a group, regardless of race, creed, religion, and all of the other bits that go along with that. So we are in a very unique place as a nation. Obviously, for almost half of Americans, this wasn't the outcome that was expected, and yet, as an EV company, Jesse and I run an EV company. I'm not worried, and as an EV podcast, as we've been hosting it every week, we study the trends, we look at things, and I don't see this gigantic threat to the EV industry. And so just to kind of answer the question, is EVs dying, or are EVs going away? No, that they are here to stay. I've had plenty of Republican friends say, oh, look what's going to happen now. The EVs are going away. No. And I've had people on the other side say, oh, no, we're going to lose it all. No, the world's not going to end. The world's going to keep spinning, and we're all going to move forward together. And if you look at Trump, I think he's going to promote U.S. jobs and U.S. economy, and part of that is the EV industry. So that ball will be pushed forward. We will do all that together. And yes, this has been a very politically dialogued episode, and yet we feel like it's a necessary conversation. Obviously, there's a lot more to talk about, and I'm sure there'll be upcoming things to talk about as different political things happen in the EV space. We will bring that up. Like and subscribe if you want to get that data whenever it comes out. Definitely go check out Will at F the Pump. Check out Josh at Josh West 24/7. Is that the right handle? Josh West 24/7.
You got it.
And check out Chris Bow at Bow Family EV, and check us out at Turn Down for What. Like and subscribe. It's been an honor to have all you gentlemen on the phone, being able to kind of discuss all of this and kind of work through what this might mean. And we look forward to the next season. And as a group, we will move forward together, and good times ahead. So tune in next week for more EV news and updates. God bless.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Awesome.
Thanks for tuning in to Turn Down for What. Make sure you're subscribed with your notifications on to tune in to more EV news and updates. See you next time.